Welcome kindreds, it's Jessica. In this video I'm going to show you how to harvest wild stinging nettles and 4 different ways to prepare them. I know, there are already hundreds of videos on YouTube about nettles, but this is something different. This is an invitation to learn directly from nettle, because nettle wisdom is experiential. We need to live it. Until we do, it lies dormant in our bone memory, in our blood, waiting to be woken up, to be stung into life. The foraging guidelines you need to keep in mind when harvesting nettle in the wild are: make sure you have the right plant. Nettles are infamous and prolific in many parts of the world, so you likely already know what they look like and where they grow near you. I'm not going to go into the details of identifying them here, because they are so well known, but I will link a couple of excellent videos in the description box if you're not sure. Don't pick in places where the plants may have been contaminated by pesticides or other pollutants like traffic fumes. So we've got lots of nettles and cleavers here, but it is a bit close to the side of the road, so I'm not going to pick them here. Say hello, Frodo. Frodo. This usually isn't a problem with nettles, as they grow so abundantly in places where no one bothers to try and get rid of them, as well as in the places where they do. But it is a good general foraging principle to keep in mind. Only pick nettle when it is not in flower. Nettles have either male or female flowers, which look very different from each other, but once you know what they look like, it's a straightforward thing to watch out for. Once nettle is in flower, there are compounds in the leaves which are toxic to humans. Where I live in Wales, some of the nettles are already flowering, but other patches, usually those which are more shaded, are not, so just look out for that and you'll be fine. Make sure that you do not over-harvest. Again, this is not generally an issue with nettle, as it is so abundant. But it's a golden rule of wildcrafting. Only take what you need, and leave more than you take. You might think that this one is more woo-woo and optional, but I feel it is important and is a principle that our ancestors would have heartily understood. And that is to leave an offering in return. Did you think I was going to say ask permission? I'll come back to both of these in a moment. I always wear gloves when I spar with nettle. I think of them as my training armour. If you're a hardcore bare-knuckle fighter, you can do without. Nettle is a feisty teacher, a plant of the warrior Mars. With nettle, your first lesson is look out, or pain will follow. Another lesson is be on guard, and for this reason, I deliberately do not ask permission before harvesting nettle. I feel that the plucking of the first leaves is a welcome challenge, a student squaring up against their master for a training session, which they will ultimately lose, but learn a lot in the process. Nettle is a plant of action and bravery. It teaches learn by doing. Don't be afraid to try. In spring and early summer, I harvest just the nettle tops, basically the top few inches of the plant, leaves and stem. I kind of bend it over and cleanly snap it off. Using scissors or a secateurs is another option. They quickly grow back, so it's a very sustainable way of harvesting. I turn the tops upside down after picking and shake them so any bugs are gently removed, and then I pop them in my basket. As for an offering, after I've gathered what I need, I say thank you, and I brush the back of my bare hand or arm against a leaf, or if it was a large harvest, against a stem, a small painful sacrifice, and I make it with gratitude. When I welcome nettle into my home, the first thing I do is make tea. This is so simple and has just 2 ingredients, nettle and boiled water. Put your nettles in a teapot or cafetiere and pour the boiling over. I don't wash mine first, but you can if you want. You will notice the water is green immediately, but as it steeps, the green gets even more vibrant and juicy. Let it brew. About 10 minutes is good, and if you do longer, it will be stronger, which can also be potent medicine. Then strain and drink. How do you feel? Sit with that. Taking a plant teacher into our bodies in this way is so powerful. It really deepens the relationship with that plant, making it so much more intimate and embodied. When I take nettle into my body, I can feel that martial courage and bravery seeping into my blood. And for a person who is usually pretty calm and easygoing, that shot of drive and fiery energy is welcome. Another way I like to invite nettle into my body is in a smoothie. This sometimes freaks people out because you're eating the whole plant and they worry it will hurt their mouths, but the blending breaks those little needle hairs that are on the nettle leaves and stems and stops them from being able to pierce into the skin. Here I use some frozen banana, nut butter, coconut oil, vanilla protein powder, half an avocado, plant milk and water. I'll list the quantities in the description box in case you want to make this exact smoothie, but you can basically use the nettle as you would any greens in a green smoothie recipe. It tends to be a little more browny, sometimes even purpley than if you use spinach. So when I make this for my kids, I embrace that and make a chocolate nettle smoothie instead. They love it. You could call it a fancy name if you like Mindful Warrior Smoothie. Well, maybe not that, but you get the idea.
It doesn't sting, I promise.
It makes my mouth feel zingy and my whole body tingle with warming nettle fire. This next one feels like cheating because you don't really do anything apart from put the nettles to dry on a sunny windowsill. I've seen loads of methods for drying and they can get really complex, which I think puts people off from doing it, which is sad. Nettle tops are pretty thin and dry well, so you don't need to get all fancy. You'll know when they're ready because they'll be crunchy and will break apart really easily. The stems should also be crispy and in theory won't sting you, but I find they still can sometimes. Totally worth it though. You can crunch them up roughly with your hands to make a nice consistency for making tea, or grind to a fine powder for adding a nutritious boost into smoothies or other recipes. If you want to harvest nettles specifically for drying, then it's best to do this when the moon is waning and in an earth sign, so Virgo, Capricorn or Taurus. You can store your dry nettles for at least a year in an airtight jar. Just make sure they are 100% dry before sealing them in, because they can get mouldy if there's any moisture left in there. You can add some rice to the bottom of the jar to absorb any moisture if you're worried. Then you can take a spoonful of nettle courage and wisdom whenever and wherever you need it. This method is the most faff and is still pretty straightforward. Bring a pan of water to the boil, add in your nettle, pop the lid on and turn the heat down. After about a minute, take the nettle out and cool it down as quickly as possible. I do this by running cold water through it. I think in theory you're supposed to plunge whatever you're blanching into a bowl of ice water. Blanching seals in the nutrients and colour, keeping the nettle good to use after being frozen. When the nettle is cool, squeeze out as much water as you can. It shouldn't sting you now because the blanching also destroys the stinging hairs. Then put in a container for the freezer. I like to use these reusable freezer bags. I'll link them in the description, but any freezer safe container is fine. You can use your frozen nettles straight from the freezer in soups, curries, pasta dishes, basically anywhere you would use spinach you can use nettle, always with gratitude. Now it's your turn. What are your lessons from stinging nettle? Let me know in the comments. Warmest blessings, and I will see you very soon.